Welcome back to the conversation pit. We have guest Mike Kitko here today, where we're diving deep into his inner thoughts, learning about how he got to being a Fortune 500 exec, being at the top to the bottom, and how he resurfaced stronger than ever. We go deep into discussing mental health, being understood, alcohol abuse, and growth mindset. Now on to the episode.
I live just outside of St. Louis, Missouri. Originally a Baltimorean, Marine veteran.
That's
Marine veteran served between 92 and 97. No combat, so no stolen valor, no combat. But exited the Marine Corps in 97 and moved back to Maryland, and I started the sending the ladder of corporate America, and I just kept getting promoted, and I kept moving and advancing, and it wasn't hard. It was pretty effortless and easy, and I didn't understand. I didn't understand what anybody saw in me. They just kept giving me more money and promoting me and paying for my education. And eventually, fast forward 16 years. I had moved twice geographically. My wife and I, with our kids, moved from Baltimore to Portland, Oregon, from Portland to St. Louis, and all the wheels came off, guys. The wheels completely collapsed, or our marriage fell apart. My health fell apart. I was drinking at toxic levels, completely incompetent at work. I was suicidal. I mean, our marriage, my home life was physically, mentally, emotionally abusive, sexually abusive to my wife. I had no confidence, no self-esteem. I had no inner strength, no dignity, no self-respect, nothing. And I got fired twice in a matter of about 20 months after a long, successful run. And a lot of that all had to do with the fact that I had zero self-awareness. I didn't understand anything about myself. So I didn't understand my strengths, my gifts. I didn't understand why I was getting promoted, and I didn't understand what people saw in me. I just knew I saw nothing in myself. And in 2016, I put the barrel of a gun in my mouth, took it back out, and didn't have the courage to kill myself. And that created a reset, a total reset, because when you can't even kill yourself effectively, you don't really have a whole lot figured out. And since 2016, I've put my life back together, my health back together, my marriage back together, my family back together. And I've built an executive coaching business that touches business owners around the world, and launched a podcast that has been listened to in 39 countries, 6 continents, 39 countries, 560 cities and growing. I'm a published author. I'm a speaker. I've got clients around the world. I've got a mastermind. I hold intensives. I help people break out of the game of no confidence and no self-esteem and no courage. And what I say, I help them find inner wealth, right? And that's the name of my company, Inner Wealth Global. And I help them find the inner wealth inside. And inner wealth always creates external wealth, like effortless and easy. I'm not a hustle whore. I'm not a grind guru. There's lots of those alpha, like, chest thumpers in the world that'll tell everybody to work harder. I teach them how to harvest the best of themselves to extract and give to the world. And from that goodness, impact creates itself, and wealth creates itself from impact. So thanks for having me on your show, guys. I really appreciate being here.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
that's very, very interesting. Very interesting up and downs and back up in your life. I don't know if I heard this correctly. Maybe you didn't touch on what caused the crash. What caused the spiral in the marriage and the toxic
So
drinking? What happened specifically?
when you lack self-esteem, when you lack self-awareness, when you lack self-confidence, when you lack self-respect, eventually the wheels are all going to fall off. Like, you can play that game for a while, and you can even thrive in that space for a while. I wrote a book called The Imposter in Charge. That was the title of my first book. And that's what we call the imposter syndrome, right? It's where the insides don't match the outside, and people see your talents and gifts, but you can't feel them. You can't experience them. You don't know what they are. You don't know your strengths from your weaknesses. And when you're in a place where you feel like if I can do it, anybody can do it. So if I can do it, it's not special. It's not unique. It's not talent. it's not valuable, it's not worthwhile. And you again, in corporate, I kept getting promoted and I kept getting ascended up the ladder, and I figured, eventually they're going to fucking figure that I got, I'm not that good. Right. And I'm sitting at the head of a table in the captain's chair of a $350 million organization, just hoping that nobody sees the fraud that I am, and the imposter, and that I don't have it all figured out. And there was an air of perfectionism. If I wasn't perfect, I wasn't okay. I wasn't adequate. And from that place, when you feel like just imagine walking through, like I just turned 50. So all this happened when I was, in my early 40s, got the midlife, right? Midlife calibration. Imagine that you're walking through a minefield, and the minefield is miles and miles long, and you're just anticipating at some point there's a mine that's just going to explode under my feet, right? It's just which step is it going to be where everything's just going to fall apart? And when you're anticipating doom at that level, and you're anticipating the mine to explode, it's going to explode because you're making it explode. It might not explode if you didn't anticipate it, but whatever you expect, right? Whatever you focus on grows. Whatever you expect to happen, you'll eventually create. So we don't get what we deserve. We get what we expect. So when I was talented and I was driven and I was successful, but the whole time, like, I would sit in, just imagine this, I would land a new position. I'd be recruited, across the country. We interviewed in when we moved from Portland to St. Louis, we were recruited by a company, and I interviewed in San Diego and up in Connecticut and Chicago and, just all over the country. And we had our pick. I mean, I could go wherever I wanted. I was highly sought after. And I got in my new position. They paid us a lot of money. It was a new industry for me. I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, but I sat down in the seat and it was like, all right, the clock's ticking. I got 3 years. I got to figure out how to get out of here before they figure out that I'm not this good. Yeah, because in corporate, right, and you look at somebody's job history, 3 years is a pretty reasonable chunk. Before 3 years, if somebody job hops before 3 years, then they're just a job hopper. So it's like, I got 3 years, clock's ticking. We got to figure out how to get the hell out of here. And the escape plan was hatched from day one. And that's because I lacked such little confidence in myself, and I didn't understand the talents, the strengths that I had, the gifts that I had, been given and gifted with. Going back to, childhood trauma and childhood shit, I was molested and I was abandoned and just abused, and I was violated and shit when I was a kid. But I remember going to school when I was a little kid, and they told me I talked too fast and I talked too much and I was too intense and I had too much energy. I needed to sit down and shut up. And those are all the things I get paid a lot of money for right now. But those things that are our strengths are typically beaten out of us when we're a child, right? As we're growing up. So we don't really understand what our unique genius is and what our talents and our gifts are. If we're around a bunch of people that don't understand us and don't try to help us get and extract and harvest the best of ourselves, or try to get us to shrink and be small, right? If they keep telling us we can't be who we are, eventually you feel so broken that nothing makes sense. Does that
Mike,
make sense, Mo?
yeah, I want to like touch upon about like psychology. How did you get so good at like psychoanalyzing yourself and being so introspective?
Fucking study, man. Just study myself,
Hmm.
study what was happening in my mind and in my body. Right.
Hmm.
I'd never taken time to look at what was going on in my mind and my body. And I didn't understand the voices. I thought, since I had voices in my head, I was broken, but everybody's got voices, right? I mean, we've got these voices in our head and they keep
Hmm.
talking to us. And most of them are very unkind. But that mask, right? That imposter syndrome makes you put on the fucking mask and not let anybody know that you're scared, because if like everybody else is, when you're in that situation, fellas, everybody else has it all figured out and I'm the only one that's broken. That's kind of what's going on inside the mind and the body, right? Everybody's, and I can't tell them that I'm scared. I can't tell them that I don't have this figured out. I can't tell them that I don't know the answer to this, because then like they'll see that I'm a fraud because they've all got it figured out and I don't, and I'm the only one who's broken. Does this make sense? So
Right.
Max, when all of this, when my job, I got fired for that second time, and it was March
Mm,
of 2016. I didn't have any income. I didn't have any job prospects. I didn't. My resume was Swiss cheese. I tried to get another job, another position. They weren't having me back because my resume was so like holy, right? It was so full of holes, and I was left with myself to sit with my mind and my body. And it's the first time that I in my life that I ever really understood, tried to understand what was going on in here and here, right? And that's when things started to really make sense. And I hired a coach, right? I had a mindset coach. I had a guy that was working with me. He was almost like a spiritual philosopher, and he was helping me understand what was going on in here and here. And but again, it was the first time I ever paid attention. So now when I have a new student, one of the first things I teach them is at some point, let's create some space and time in your day. Close your eyes, sit still, and just pay attention to what's happening inside you. You'll learn more about you than you could ever imagine, and that's where your true strength and your talent and your power is. That's where your power is, not in your actions, but in your awareness and your understanding of yourself.
mm. Yeah, definitely. I definitely agree with that.
That's very inspiring. One thing that I do with myself is just breathing, looking at your thoughts. And there's an old saying, let your thoughts be a house. If somebody opens the door, just let it go and walk out the back, in and out. And I've noticed that in the fast world of business, in corporations, hustle, 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 the real success, the ones who climb up the ladder, the ones who are most fulfilled, the ones who have the strongest relationships and the strongest
Move
network
slow, sure,
are the ones who are patient and the ones who move slow. The ones who move
absolutely.
slower are the ones who end up further. You know, what's an example? You know, today I was exercising, I was lifting weights, and I decided to do some ab works on my abs. And I decided to get a heavy machine, like they use the heavy machine, a heavy weight, and start doing it. I only could do 8 reps. Then I looked at the guy next to me, old man, doing the lightest weight, and he's been doing it for a good 15 minutes. Kept going. I looked at him, and I said to him, you know what? You're the one who's doing it for a longer time. You're the one who's more comfortable with his body. You're the one who's breathing more properly. I got to follow that. Do it lightly. Where am I going to go? Where are you going to go? You're going to go nowhere. Same thing in business. People try to rush a sale. They try to rush a connection, try to rush a collaboration. What are you going to do if you rush a collaboration? Nothing. You're going to talk with them more. You know, once you close the sale, guess what you're going to do next? You're going to speak, get on the phone and call them again. Ask them about their day, ask them about their wedding, ask them about their kid. Then a majority of the conversation talking about them, and then the
Look,
sale is
when I
less than
started when
5%.
I started my business, and I decided to start my business somewhere mid 2017. All right. And this is after I had already started putting things back together. My health was coming back together. And I actually filed for divorce in June of 2016. And that's what helped us put our marriage back together because my wife was in pharmaceutical addiction as well. And that was kind of her shot across the bow that for her to start putting shit together. But when I decided to start building this business and I started marketing, now here's what marketing looked like for me. I just went to like networking groups, and I don't love networking now, but that's kind of what I did. I went out to some of the groups, and I just said, when I would introduce myself, I wouldn't say I was a coach. I would say executive leaders hire me to help them feel as powerful inside as they appear on the outside. Right? It's just the problem that I had. So at this point, I started to understand how to put my shit back together. So I just that was all my marketing, guys. No website, no freaking business cards, no nothing. Like that was my entire marketing plan. My
Just winging it.
executive leaders help me hire me to help me or hire me to help them feel as powerful inside as they appear outside, which is the problem that I faced. Right, I was helping the people that I knew, the executive leaders, solve the problem that I had. So it was pretty simple. And 2017, I did some nice business, right? So the second half of 2017, I did nice business. And 2018, my first full year in business, I crushed anything I ever did in corporate, because the need is so vast for people that feel internally disconnected from themselves and uncertain and unconfident, and they lack courage and they lack clarity in what they want to do and who they are and how do I do that. And here's the most powerful part for me, right, with all of this, is I want you to think about a goal that you have right now. Now, you don't share this goal because we're not. I just want you guys to think about a goal that you have right now. Cool? You got a goal? There's a distance between where you are and your achievement of that goal. And that distance is comprised of two parts. One is psychological distance and the other is tactical distance. So, Mo, what you were just describing is someone, okay, when you talk about, my wife coined the phrase is hustle whores and grind gurus. All right. When you talk about hustle whores and grind gurus, all they're talking about is closing the tactical distance. Work, effort, harder, more, right? All they're trying to do is close, and they're focusing and paying attention on the tactical distance. But the psychological distance, they're not clear about what they want. They don't understand why they want what they want. They don't feel confident that they're going to get it. They don't feel courageous. They don't understand. They don't understand why they don't understand what they, why they feel broken and why they feel vulnerable and why they feel incapable, but they can't share that because they're just being told to hustle, grind. They're feeling insecure and they're feeling exposed and vulnerable and they're feeling fucking inadequate and insignificant. They're feeling all these things and they're just being told to just close this tactical distance. But they're not paying attention to the psychological distance. The psychological distance, right? That's the biggest distance you have to close. It's not in the action. Once you close this psychological distance, it's like, and I use this metaphor. In the Marine Corps, we used to have two approaches to war fighting. One is spray and pray. Get a bunch of M60s up here and just fucking fire as much lead downrange as possible. We'll get them by firing a whole bunch of fucking lead. And then you get the sniper, one shot, one kill. I'm just going to put one between your fucking eyebrows and then you'll fall. And then my mission is accomplished. I don't need 100 Marines with M60s and tens of thousands of dollars in ammo. I just need one bullet between your fucking eyebrows, right? The point is when you close that psychological distance, you just need one round. But when the psychological distance is huge, when you're dealing with uncertainty and lack of clarity and no confidence and no courage, when you're dealing with mental chaos and mental distress, and the average entrepreneur has 80 to 120,000 thoughts per day, and most of them not kind, and they don't understand that, and they're dealing with all this internal distress. That action they're taking is going to be like completely haphazard. It's going to be volatile. It's going to be like sporadic. It's going to be watered down. It's going to be the people are going to hear their lack of confidence on the phone. Are you getting what I'm saying? It's closing that psychological distance that creates your power so that when you take that one action, it gives you the results you're looking for. This is the same thing Tim Ferriss teaches in the 4-Hour Work Week. He just calls them different things. He says, I'll sit in a hot tub for 3 months and I'll get clear about what I want to do. And I'll do one thing and I'll have 3 months worth of results from that one action. This is exactly what we're talking about. But we gotta like create time and space in our life to really understand what's happening inside of our mind and our body. Cause that's where your power is. That's where your magic is. Or you can just be like everybody else and just flail in life, man. Just be like them.
That's the fixed mindset, though. We're not about that. We're all about growth here.
I'm with you. It's tongue in cheek that, there's so many hustle whores and grind gurus out there that are just telling people to kill themselves. There's plenty of time to sleep when you're dead.
It's all snake oil.
For me, there's plenty of time to enjoy life too, because I don't take massive action. I work 10 to 20 hours a week and I crush a lot of people's freaking, in a month, what they make in a year. I mean,
There's a good TED talk by Simon Sinek. It's called Understanding Your Why.
Why? Yeah.
And in that, to make it a story short, he discusses why Apple was so successful. And they were so successful because they understood their why, and that was to think differently.
Right.
So really at your core, your psychological is understanding your why. And that is your driving force. If you don't know your why, what's pushing you forward?
So the mission of my business is to make the world a more loving place. That's the entire mission of my business. Because when I help the entrepreneur, the business owner, fall over heels, absolutely in love with themselves, basically closing that psychological distance. When they fall head over heels in love with themselves, there's 0% chance, first of all, that they're going to fail at the goal. But second of all, they're going to start to pass on that love, and they're going to start like encouraging other people to close a psychological distance, and not just that, but to feel more whole, complete, and valuable, and worthy, and deserving, and abundant, and wealthy. And they're going to pass that on. And this world's going to become a much more magical place for my kids to live.
What are your thoughts on Elon Musk?
He's brilliant. The thing that I love about Elon is that he you can hear people who say they don't care what other people think, and then you can see people actually living and embodying it. And that guy, he is driven by his own internal rhythms. And I love that. And I don't care who you are. When you're living authentically, and when you're living in your zone, in your authenticity, it shines through. And I think that's an example for everyone. No two people on this planet think the same. So to think that the way somebody thinks is flawed is not, that's another form of like self-inflicted like inadequacy. I have to think a certain way to be okay. But to watch somebody who's living authentically and who's living unconditionally their truest nature and their truest form, to me is complete art and it's beauty. I love what he does. I love the fact that he's living life on his terms. I, and I love that he's a billionaire. I hear a lot of people blaming all the billionaires for all the problems in the world, but he's solving more problems than the poor people are creating, right? So, what do you think about Elon Musk?
I like to speak highly of everyone. I really do. I also like to speak as a father to everyone and speak about what they can do better. And with Elon Musk, what he can do better is developing that emotional maturity to lead others, being able to shorten the
Mhm.
psychological distance that you were mentioning, discussing more about his mental health and his identity. And I would like to see him to be more of a father figure, leader figure to the generation. There is a lot of comments that he makes that could be more appropriate. One of the key things is I'm in the neuroscience field.
No.
So you've heard of this company Neuralink, correct? So he has a company Neuralink that builds brain computer interfaces, chips for various disorders. And so they go through animal testing. And there was an investigation today that was identified that an estimated 1,500 animals were killed in his company. And that was because he was pushing his employees to work faster on this neurological medical device, and that medicine doesn't move at that pace. So there's a lot he does great and a lot that he can do better.
Yeah. And I
So
would say,
that's
Mo,
what my
that
thoughts on
we
Elon.
each could say the same thing. Now, does he have a bigger influence? Of course, but we could all do the same thing. One thing you mentioned was you like to approach things from the fatherly perspective. My kids really started driving themselves when I stopped driving them. My kids stopped needing me, or they started thriving when I stopped pointing out what they could do better and started pointing out to your point, what they did well. So I'm not sure if I agree with the fatherly thing is to tell somebody what they could do better, but I do agree the fatherly thing is definitely to tell somebody all about their strengths and what they do awesome. And I've been on both sides for a while. I thought in my marriage and in my parenting, I thought my job was to tell my family what opportunities they had to grow. But when I started pointing to where they were already perfect, they closed those opportunities to grow themselves. They motivated themselves. So anyway, I think all of us have awesome gifts and talents, and we do things great. But we're always going to be able to look at each other and say that there's something there's something we could do better, right? We're human beings, and we're playing this human game, and there's no perfection. Perfection is just a myth. It's not going to happen. Nobody anywhere. I mean, the guy's having a massive influence. Steve Jobs had a massive influence, but he's got some damage that he inflicted on people, right? So no matter who you are, there's going to be some poison that you leave behind.
No matter how professional you are in whatever field, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, Leonardo da Vinci, they all had flaws that were often overlooked. The Beatles singer John Lennon, everyone loves him. He last a very great legacy in the music industry. But if you really dig deep into it, he had some flaws in terms of his family life. And like, we often overlook all of those flaws overall, and we look with a lens on their professional life. That usually is the lasting impact. I was reading today about Howard Hughes, multi-billionaire tycoon that did a lot of defense contracting work in the aviation field. And in his later life, he had mental illnesses, OCD, and was like trapped in his room. He was a huge individual that was all over Hollywood, dated models. And then near his end of his life, he became super paranoid, would often pee in water bottles and would like close the curtains, and was just an overall recluse. He would like buy the Hollywood hotel just to stay out there longer, would buy the hotel next door, turn off the neon sign. He would do all these things. He had his own antics, but that was often overlooked on the bigger picture of who that individual was. And I would say 15 years ago, Leonardo DiCaprio started a movie about him. And, near the end of it, it did discuss that. But overall, going back to that big picture, that's what people really look at.
And I mean, when you're at that level of fame and acclaim, I mean, there's going to be a bigger spotlight, so it's going to be easier to see the flaws, right? But to compare his flaws to ours and think that there's something greater with his flaws than ours,
right?
I don't think that's very fair to anyone. We all have them, right? We all have them. To pretend that perfection's possible is just fooling ourselves.
Let's go on the definition of perfection, right? You're a very successful individual. In the eyes of perfection, you don't have to deal with all the traumas of putting a shotgun to your mouth, to getting molested, to getting your divorce. Your entire relationship with your wife during that time would have been perfect. All of that would have been perfect, but that was a huge learning lesson for you to be a better person.
So here's a cool way to look at this. So do you think that there's anyone no, I'm going to ask you guys. Have you ever woken up and you've decided, I am going to absolutely fucking fuck up as much as I possibly can today to make today as bad as possible? Have you ever done that? Yeah, nobody has. Nobody has. Even people that are fucking every day up, people that rob banks, even people that are hurting people and molesting people and raping people, none of them have the intention to cause harm. What they have this shit going on in here that they don't know how to deal with. Hurt people.
I agree with that.
So what I'm saying is, there is accountability in this world, right? We do have some accountability, and we do have a legal system and legal systems. So I'm not saying ignore all that stuff, but literally everyone is doing the very best they can. When you look back, you can always see areas of opportunity. But in the moment, you've never decided in a given moment that I am going to make the worst decision possible that I possibly can right now in this moment. I've got 10 decisions. Let me choose the worst one. You've never done it one time. But we compare, like we excuse our indiscretions, but we hold other people to an element of perfection, right? So when we have a palette, or we have uh, a buffet of choices that we can make. We're weighing pros and cons, and okay, that there's benefits and pros and cons to each one. Let me pick this one because it looks like it's going to be the best pick out of these. They're all imperfect, but let me pick this one. This is the one I'm going to take, and then we run into like a wall, or something happens where we see that it's not perfect, and now we create some type of unintended consequence from that action. This is the same thing that other people that are operating from a lower level of awareness and consciousness are doing. They're just creating more damage and destruction, but they're operating from that same level of let me pick the best choice, but they're all shitty. Let's see. I can either rob a bank, I can murder somebody, or I can rape somebody. Let me pick the one that makes the most sense, right? That's their buffet. But the point being is, no one in any second is really intending to cause destruction. They're doing the best they can. Unfortunately, it's just not very good. Does this make sense, guys? This is why I forgave myself for everything that happened in my life, because I can look back and there was no single moment where I chose to hurt anyone. I just didn't know how not to.
We all feel we're doing what's best, even though in some eyes it might not be perceived that.
Correct. Because from the outside, when you're not in this mind and the emotions that we have in our mind and our body, when we don't have to deal with the chaos of our mind and the mental state that we're in, when we don't have to feel all the fear and the insecurity, inadequacy, and insignificance, like people when somebody would promote me, they didn't feel the inadequacy that I had in my body. All they saw was the talent that I had. I felt the inadequacy. I wouldn't have promoted my ass because I felt inadequate, but they did because they couldn't feel it. Well, the same thing happens on the flip side, right? Where somebody causes some damage and we judge them, and we don't have to deal with their insides. They do, they are, but we don't excuse that. We shouldn't. We do have a framework to this whole human thing and this social thing, but the point is when somebody robs a bank, they've gotten to a point where they say, I have no other choices, and the man owes me. Somebody owes me. This is my only choice for getting this thing that I want. So let me do that because all of my other options are they're gone. Or they feel like that's the only thing they're good at. Or they feel like, right, all other doors are closed. But there's something inside of these stories in their mind that's telling them that is the right course of action. I hope this makes sense. It doesn't mean it's the right course of action in the grand scheme of society. It means in their minds, it makes sense. But to us outside of them, it makes no sense whatsoever. But we're not dealing with what's happening in their freaking mentally deranged mind.
How do you lead those people? How do you guide those people? All they're making is bad decisions. Bad, 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 bad. They don't even realize they're making bad decisions. They have no other option but to make bad decisions. What can they do themselves to start making those good decisions, evaluating those bad decisions on a higher level? Number one. And number two, what could we do, a leader could do to guide them? Because you don't want to go up to them and force them, like you said earlier, like a father, and say, don't do this or do
A
that.
good example.
But you want to guide
Be
them. So
Kanye
what do you
West,
do?
by the way.
What say again? What was that last part, Max? I'm sorry.
I was saying a good example would be Kanye West and how he's been acting recently.
First of all, listen, guys. There's 8 billion people on this planet, and I think when you look at society, there's always going to be pain. So to think that we're ever going to get to the spot, I mean, look, am I an optimist? Absolutely. But am I a realist? 100%. There's 8 billion people, and you're not going to get everybody to feel okay all at the same time. All right. Can we agree on that? There's going to be pain in this world. There's 8 billion people, and that's growing, right? It'll be 9 in 5 years. 9 billion people. There's going to be pain. There's going to be someone who's suffering, and hurt people hurt people. So to expect that there's never going to be somebody who's not dealing with some psychological internal ailment is like, again, that's a little delusional. So let's be realists that there's always going to be somebody there. We can't force somebody to want something that they don't want. We can hold up a mirror, we can shine a light. But I just got back from a Joe Dispenza workshop. You guys familiar with that guy? Yeah. I love me some Dr. Joe Dispenza, and he does awesome work. And I literally, at this workshop, I literally saw people get out of their wheelchair. Like they were wheeled in, they haven't walked for decades. And they literally, like, through this deep meditative work and this healing restorative work that we did at this workshop, they literally stood up, and it was the first time they stood up in decades. And there was somebody in one of these little groups that I had, that I was in, and her son was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, did 20 months of work with Dr. Joe, and he was cancer free. So I literally saw this kid with my own eyes. I heard her testimony. Joe said it. She said it. She was in my little group. I heard it from her own mouth. Okay. So there are things that we can do as human beings. The mind can heal the body. Okay. It's been proven by medical science. The mind can heal the body. That's why there's spontaneous remission. That's why there's people that, there's regenerative things that we can do from a psychological perspective. If you check out the book, You Are the Placebo by Dr. Joe Dispenza, it's very enlightening and very encouraging. Okay. So here's the point. I've had people tell me, I've got this disease. I'm OCD, I'm ADD, I'm ADHD, I'm bipolar, I'm whatever, blah, 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 laundry list of diagnoses. And I'm like, hey, check out You Are the Placebo. Just give it a read one time and see what you think. But you don't understand. I've got ADHD. And they start to fight for their diagnosis. They don't want to let it go. They're identified with it. It's part of their identity. They're going to fight you. Don't take it away. You don't understand. I'm OCD. I was diagnosed 30 years ago, and I'm OCD. You don't understand. Stop trying to take my identity from me, and stop trying to heal my disease, and stop trying to give me hope that I can be healed from this disease. Just cut it out and let me have my disease. And those people, there is literally nothing you can do for them. When someone feels hopeless, when somebody feels like they're a victim, and they want to feel hopeless and they want to feel like a victim, there is literally nothing you can do for them. All you can do is ask if they're open, and if they say no, they give you indication, the answer is no, you walk away. Mo, I'm going to say this, brother, okay? I'm saying this with love. You are your villain. You are your own victim, and you are your own hero. Nobody's doing anything to you. Nobody has ever hurt you permanently without your permission, and nobody can save you. Max, you are your own villain, you are your own victim, and you are your own hero. And me too. Right? No one's coming to save us. And no one can take anything away from us that we don't want to give up. And the same thing for everybody else. If we want to be victims, guys, if we want to blame the billionaires for our financial state, there's nothing anybody can do about that.
But love can be a hero and a villain.
Love cures all, man. That's why all we can do is, if they fight for their diagnosis, we just love them where they are. But we can't help them with their diagnosis. We can't help them if they're not going to read the books. If they're not going to have some hope. If they're not, there's nothing we can do. All we can do is love them. And write this down. This is probably the greatest acronym I've ever heard of, ever. Love Ready? Every listener, write this down. It'll change your life. Love stands for letting others voluntarily evolve. If you're trying to change somebody, it's not an act of love. If you're supporting someone who wants to change, that is an act of love. But trying to get somebody to change that doesn't want to change is an act of manipulation. Love is accepting them where they are, no matter what. Letting others voluntarily evolve. It'll change the world.
Absolutely.
What if that person crossed boundaries?
Mm-hmm.
What if that person crossed some severe boundaries? For example, let's say they
That's why there's a legal system.
murdered.
That's why there's the legal system.
Let's say they cheated.
Right. That's why there's a legal system.
And is the legal system built from something deeper than love? You're saying
it's built for when people are not living in a state of love. We can love them when they're in prison, but the legal system is for when people are living from a state of fear, not a state of love. The person who hurts somebody, the person who murders somebody, the person who is living in and hurting people, they're living out of fear. They're not living out of love. But the judge who sentences, who kindly, compassionately, empathetically sentences someone to life in prison, it's an act of love. Listen, I understand you didn't want to do this. I understand that you were operating at the highest level of awareness in your consciousness. If you could have operated at a higher level of awareness and consciousness, you would have. And I know that. And I appreciate that. And I love you for that. I accept you for that. Life imprisonment. Because that's the level of awareness and consciousness that you're operating from, and that's not acceptable in society. And I've got to protect society. Is this making sense?
Yes. I always approach it as there's a difference between loving from the heart and then loving from the brain. So when you love from the heart, it's emotional. You give, you provide, you support in every way possible. When you love from the brain, it's about setting boundaries. It's about saying no. It's about guiding. There's a difference between giving your child candy every single day because where they're at is, I want candy today. I want candy today. Versus saying, you're going to have to eat your vegetables today because I know how your brain is going to evolve over the next few years. Okay. I know you love where they're at right now is they want candy. Love where they're at right now is maybe they don't want to do their homework. Maybe they're lazy. They want to, not their kids, but your friends. They want to drink beer. Oh, not like just casual beer, but like beer. Like you want to drink all night, right? And so loving from the heart is, okay, letting go, letting them voluntarily evolve. Let them drink the beer. Okay, letting them evolve by themselves. What if someone's a drug addict? Well, they're heroin, doing deeper and deeper steps about letting the voluntarily evolve. And then there's a point where you have to love from the brain and say, no, this is wrong, and I will not allow this. Okay, what you're doing is wrong. You're harming yourself. You're harming your family. You're harming your friends. You're harming your loved ones.
So
this is loving from the brain. It's saying no and being disciplined and enforcing. And so I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. The judicial system, the legal system does love from the heart. And then it goes up and loves from the brain. It says, all right, we want you to change.
And I agree with you. And I agree with you. So the only thing that I would want to point out, and I fought the urge to jump in. You guys have kids? No. Okay, I do have two kids, and I did have the experience of raising two kids that couldn't fend for themselves, and my responsibility was to protect them from everything in the world. When we're dealing with a heroin addict, that's not what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a grown ass adult who, if that grown ass adult wants heroin, is going to find heroin. But do we have a penal system for when they cross boundaries? Absolutely. And this is what I'm saying. But I've also been in the battle with my wife when she was a pharmaceutical addict, and I tried to hide her pills and I tried to do all this thing, and then she'd just go and find another source. Like an addict who wants their next fix, you can't stop, and you're not going to discourage, and there's nothing you can do. That's why my act of love was filing for divorce, right? Hey, you got problems, and my life, like, I want different, and I'm not going to be part of that, like, that circus anymore. And that was my boundary, Mo, where I was like, I have a vision for my life and what I want my life to look like, and that chaos that you're still mired in is not part of it. So I'm going to go this way. It doesn't mean that you're not a bad person. It doesn't mean that I need to punish you, or I don't need to, like, we don't need to live in a state of conflict. It just means I just need to walk away and love you from a distance. That's all. So
what happened after you set the boundary? You said you filed for divorce and then the relationship got better.
Up to that point,
I think I remember
enabler.
Earlier.
So she would create problems and I would fix them, and she would create problems and I would fix them. She would be in handcuffs and I would solve it. And I just kept, like, fixing the problems that she made. And she learned to rely on me because I was fixing all these problems. And when she was an absentee parent and she was in bed for a month, and I was working and taking my kids to school, picking my kids up, going to the grocery store, cooking, cleaning, when I was doing all these things, and I was allowing her to lay in bed for months at a time in absolute pharmaceutical paralysis, when I allowed her to do that, she had no reason not to. That's just enabling. So it's when I filed for divorce and she saw that the gravy train was over and the enabling was over, that's when she went, oh my God, now I've got to do something different, because my source, my safety, my comfort, my stability, the only stability I've ever had in my life, right? It's gone. Does this make sense? So it's like I pulled the plug on her source of energy, her ability to just stay detached and still survive.
I'm in love with this conversation. Can you please then talk about, you don't have to give details, but any personal information,
Yeah.
After you set the boundaries, after you pull the plug, how did her actions change? And did you stay plug pull? Did you move it back? Or
I stayed plug pulled.
Tell me more next step.
Here's what it looked like. We were already in separate bedrooms because our marriage was not good. So when I decided to start cleaning up myself, all right, I stopped drinking and I really stopped looking for a job because I was done with the whole corporate game. But I started cleaning myself. That's when I hired a coach, and that's when I started getting some psychological help. And I started reading a lot, and she saw me meditating, and she would heckle me and she would belittle me and laugh at me. And, you're in there meditating and we need benefits, right? And so she would laugh at me and heckle me. And look, at that point, I still kind of thought that's just it's what's going to happen. I'm just going to be laughed at my whole life, right? Low self-esteem, working through that stuff. So after, I kept doing the work, I stopped meditating and I kept meditating, and I started, like, regaining my confidence and finding new levels of courage and seeing what the hell happened. And I started seeing the codependency that I was living in, that I was the enabler. And she was just using me as a source of stability. And I mean, I added no other value to her life, except I allowed her to completely detach and still survive. So when I filed for divorce, Mo, it was a Friday evening, and I came home from the lawyer's office, and she was on the phone with one of her friends. And I walked in, and I just said, hey, I just want you to, I was in a different bedroom, but I walked in and I said, I just want you to know I filed for divorce. And I walked out. So I heard her on the phone. And she said, "Ha, he just came in and told me he filed for divorce. Let me go see what this nonsense is about," or something like that to that effect. So she hung up and she came in and I told her, I said, "Yeah, you'll be served on Monday, but I filed for divorce. So it's in motion. I mean, this thing, I'm done. I'm like, I'm not going to deal with this anymore." And she laughed at me. She literally laughed. And she was still high. She was very high. And she went back into her bedroom and our bedroom. And the next morning, I'm an early riser. So I was up early and I was down in my downstairs and I'm like doing my studying and reading and meditating and journaling. And she walked down and she was in tears. And she said, "Hey, I don't want to get divorced." I was like, "You don't understand. I'm done." This is 16 years of fucking madness and chaos, and nothing good has come out of this except for our two kids, and we're even hurting them. And this is going to stop, right? So, and we had about 4 or 5 hours of discussion where she was basically like, what is it going to take for this not to happen? What is it going to take? And I'm like, here's what it's going to take. It's going to take you being clean, me being clean, us living completely conflict free, drama free. We're not going to create struggle in each other's lives. We're not going to fucking tear each other down. We're not going to belittle each other. We're not going to heckle each other. We're going to support each other. We're going to encourage each other. We're going to inspire each other. We're going to lift each other up. We're going to love each other. We're going to protect each other. And we're going to fucking be our each other's best friend. And she said, "Will you be patient with me while I get there?" I said, "I'll do my very best." And that night we went to NA, and it was the first time that she went to an NA meeting. And we went together, and she did 90 and 90. Now, she had some hiccups along the way, but the conflict and the drama and the chaos was over because that boundary had been set, to your point. And I told her from the beginning, I said, "Look, I already paid the papers are in motion. I already paid the lawyer." I said, I'm just going to call into that." When I told her that, we're going to NA, I called and just said, "Look, just put a pause on it. Keep the money, put a pause on the paperwork. I'm not pulling them back. Put a pause on it." And I left it there for about 6 months because I had to build up confidence that it wasn't just going to like all start to fall apart again. I hope that makes sense, man. And there were a couple hiccups in there, relapses. But the point is every time there was a relapse, there was another double down commitment to getting better. And every time, the length of time that was clean got better and extended and more powerful.
What I respect a lot about that story is you never giving up and you always believed in her, like even to the point of the breaking point. Like you still believed, but you had to set up those boundaries.
Mm-hmm. And I'll say this also, Max, is I believe in her, but I also believe in me. And my wife, I love her. Look, we have an awesome marriage. Not this October, last October, we celebrated our 20th wedding anniversary. We went down to the Bahamas, had an awesome beach marriage ceremony, renewing our vows. That it was awesome. So this is like, it's fairy tale shit. Our marriage has become fairy tale shit. We are best friends. We are bonded, and we are each other's greatest source. And I set that expectation, right? So I deserve that. I deserve that in the relationship. And that's what I'm talking about. I deserve that. And she knows that. And when I talk about the health that I want to live, when I talk about how I want to serve in the world, when I talk about how I want to impact the world, when I talk about how many hours a week I want to work, when I talk about what travel I want to do, we've reached a level, we've reached an agreement that I'm going to have what I want. If she's in or out, I'm still going to have what I want. And I want her to do the same, right? So marriage isn't about two people compromising themselves and both being miserable together. Marriage is about two people being their full authenticity and they're having personal authority and having their own life and living their own dreams and also living a dream life together. So like I have a business and I run my business and she doesn't get to like like influence the business. It's my business. And she can she participates. She does my event planning and coordination. She loves that shit. But I am the business owner and I make the decisions in the business. Does this make sense? When she gets money scared, that's not my problem. That's her problem to fix. And when she's living her life, I don't get to criticize and tear down her choices because I want her to live her most powerful life. And a line that I heard a long time ago, I want for you what you want for you, so much so that I want that for you, even if it doesn't include me. And I live that way in my marriage too. Like if she outgrows me, I want her to fly away. Like go live an extraordinary life. This isn't codependency anymore, where we rely on each other for our own security and for our own emotional needs and for our security. Like we've become secure in ourselves, and we're secure together. So when the marriage what I thought was marriage, and this is the marriage that was modeled for me, is that both people give up what they want most in order to be together. And I don't think it doesn't have to be true.
Do you think a codependency marriage could be successful?
Say again?
Do you think a codependent marriage could be successful?
If both people continue to remain happy in their codependency. And codependency typically means somebody's sacrificing or both are sacrificing, and somebody gets the benefit of the sacrifice and somebody's sacrificing. And when someone sacrifices, eventually the sacrifice turns into resentment. Have you seen
Right.
that? So,
Yeah.
I mean, eventually that, we give with the expectation of receiving in codependence, right?
Absolutely.
We give, we're a martyr. We give in the hopes that at some point somebody will see what we need or see what we want and they'll give it to us. So, and then when we don't get what we want, or when we don't get what we need, or when we expect somebody to guess and anticipate what we want and we don't get it, that level of resentment bubbles up and then we explode. Can it be successful? Sure. If both people remain, that adage, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy, it's bullshit. But if somebody wants to live from that place and be okay with it, sure. If you want to consider a marriage successful where somebody's compromising themselves for the betterment of the relationship and then you die, then sure, it can be successful.
I have to let you guys know that it's the top of the hour. I do have to get going. What I will say is that this is the most enlightening conversation I've ever had. And maybe it's because it's coming at a very personal moment in my life where I'm dealing with a similar situation in terms of relationship, codependency, boundaries, love from brain, love from heart. I want to be able to speak about that sometime. I can't right now. I do have to go. I want to
Yeah.
I'm in.
speak again.
Just tell me when,
Whenever I
guys.
speak
I'm
again,
in.
Mike.
Mike, we both live in St. Louis, so we can definitely, you know what I would love to do, Mike? I'd love to come to your workshops, and in segueing that on, I'd want to hear when your next workshop is. Tell the audience when your next one is coming up.
It's in January. I don't have the dates yet, but
Okay.
it's gonna be a wealth intensive. And what I mean by wealth, it's creating inner wealth that creates external wealth. It's small. It's 5 people, and I've got 3 seats left. So starting in January, what I'm going to be doing, guys, is we're going to have 3 powerful days, full days together, where I'm gonna really teach you how to close the psychological distance to achieve your goals and achieve the wealth that you want. Then we're going to spend 3 months of accountability and touch points and making sure that we're actually making progress towards it. It starts in January. The ticket price is $10K. It's $10,000 per seat. So I'll give you guys $9K for listening to this podcast. But reach out to me, Mike at Mike Kitko, and I'd love to entertain that.
We appreciate it, Mike. And where can they find this?
It's if you, it's not available on the website. This is a container I'm launching that's not even on the website because it's so small and it's so intimate. My website is innerwealthglobal.com. And you'll be able to find other things that I'm doing that are more, I guess, routine. This is a once or twice a year thing that I do. Awesome, guys. Thanks so much for having me. It's been awesome just jamming with you guys.